Perfect.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We are here with another episode of The Journey Within. I'm your host, Andrea Escobar, spiritual guide and intuitive. Each week, we have the immense pleasure of chatting with different healers, vision holders, and storytellers as they walk us through their own journey within and how they were able to transform their dark night of the soul experience into a passion. Today, I have the incredible Marla Goldberrg with us. She is an energy healer, intuitive speaker, teacher, host of the Guided Spirit Conversations podcast, the best-selling author of My Fucking Long Journey to Loving Myself, A Guide to a Shorter Path. By the way, I love the title.
Thank you.
And her mission in life is to help others either enhance their current life circumstances or shift them into a more positive one. I am really, really excited about chatting with Marla today. She has such an incredible story, and it really embodies why I created this entire series. She went from because you were working a very different type of
Life. I was
life, and then you
retired.
transitioned into this. And I know that you had your own rock bottom experience that kind of led you through that. So before we
Yes.
dive into all of that, I want to know it all, like where you grew up, how your childhood was, and then walk us to that pivotal time in your life.
Oh, God. So I was raised in the city of Chicago in an area called West Rogers Park.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, safe, fun, where all the kids used to play on each other's together in the front. And, you could go and play with your friends, or you just knew you had to be home at dinner time. There was a lot of freedom back then. But my family was, like many, a highly dysfunctional one. And my parents, they were so caught up with their own disappointments and bitterness and anger at the way their life didn't turn out. Um, and in that regard, we had a lot of freedom, too much freedom for children our age. An example is when I was 10 years old, I started figure skating. And my father would take me and pick me up with my sister at the beginning, but at a certain point, he's like, no, you want to go? Take the bus. So we were 10, 11 years old, we'd take two buses to get there. And it was a sketchy neighborhood back when I was a child.
Yeah.
But I wanted to skate. So I would take myself there Friday night, Saturday, come home for dinner, go back out Saturday night, come back, go back Sunday. So Friday and Saturday night, place closes at 10 o'clock. So I'm standing by myself at the bus stop at right after I take off my skates and get out there. So it could be 10:15, 10:30. And then I'd have to walk two blocks, 2.5 blocks by myself. Well, that's a pretty scary thing for a kid to do. And the fact that nobody got up. So you had your key, you let yourself in, you became very resourceful, very independent, very early. And I mean, there was one example where I went to an eye doctor in downtown Chicago where I had to take two buses and a train. I was 10 years old. At the time, I didn't know any different. So I didn't realize how messed up that was, how young a 10-year-old was, because I was so capable. That on the other hand, it definitely left its marks. And so, I mean, that kind of behavior, I just did what I learned to do, whatever I wanted to do. It was never questioned. When I was in 8th grade, a few girls and I would go out with a group of guys, and we didn't get into any trouble, but it was 5 days a week and was never questioned. Where are you? Why are you coming home so late? Because I'd come home at curfew. Nobody asked, is your homework done? Did you do what you needed to do? Because nobody cared. And so that sort of bled into my life because nobody said no to me until I think when I was 16 was the first time someone really said no. And I was like, well, that doesn't work. You haven't done it up until now. Why do you think it's going to work today? But it was really hard when I got into the workforce. because even though I was a hard worker and I was really good at what I did and I was diligent and I worked overtime and I did things above and beyond what I was supposed to do, um, all of a sudden the new company bought out the company I was working for, and I didn't have the tools to know how to deal with conflict resolution. I didn't know how to deal with any of these things. And it just started this downward spiral for me. So when I was in my mid 20s, I just sort of like lost my stuff. And I mean, I had anxiety attacks. I was having, I couldn't go out. I would go to work and the walls would undulate and I would totally freak out. And so I went to this therapist and I didn't realize she was sharing metaphysical principles with me that I remember on our first meeting, I said to her, I should, and what if, and, all those things. And she goes, let's stop here. You're exactly where you're supposed to be because you have something to learn. So take what ifs and shoulds and all those other kind of words and get it out of your vocabulary because they don't matter. And it was like, oh, okay. And she really helped me rapidly. But then I still, because of my upbringing, kept making really bad decisions for myself. And like the relationships I brought in, I just kept trying to bring in people like my father who were emotionally and they were unavailable. And my feeling was, well, if I could get this one to work, then it would sort of like make things okay at home, make things okay with my father. And it took me a long time. And God, I was a serial entrepreneur. I had, good success in my businesses, um, but I ran into the same issues. And then a man who I dated when I was 18 became my first husband. Now, when I was 18 and he was 23, he was wonderful. He was funny. He was supportive, da 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 da. But he became very successful. He was not an options trader. I'm sorry. He was a board of trade trader, and he made a lot of money very fast, very early, and got hung up in drugs. And the woman he married, and he got up with drugs and alcohol, and it was really bad. And the only way they got off of drugs was they had no more money. I mean, he would get arrested with copious amounts of drugs on him. And they thought he was trying to resell the drugs. This was just his own stash. That's how much he was ingesting. Yeah. But, so 20 years later, some friends put us back together. His wife had passed away. And I just said, how is he doing? And it turned into a blind date. The problem is he kept bringing his kids into our dates. And so I saw the writing on the wall on how dysfunctional those kids, I mean, they were so messed up on so many levels because their mother had a brain aneurysm. They found her, he was in rehab. And so it was just one thing after another. And then after the funeral, nobody gave them grief counseling. They just sent him off to the mother's family. And the kids came home and he was with some woman who he met in rehab, but she was there because she tried to kill her children and herself with cyanide. So this is what the kids come home to from, their grieving period. And it just didn't get any better for them. And I saw my life and I'm like, I've got all these tools I could help. And it was those kids that made me go forward in the relationships because I could have walked away from him. I couldn't walk away from them.
Because they would have been walking away from you.
Yes. And my savior, oh my God, my savior's like, I can do it. I can do it. I can do anything. I can save them. And, I came in and everyone went into therapy and da 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 da. And there was a lot of changes for all of us. I mean, I know that, and I'll just put it out now, we're estranged, the children and I, but, they just only think about what they went through. They don't think about what I might have gone through jumping into, from being an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, to being a mother, to a 10 and a 10 and a 13-year-old.
Ooh, tough ages.
Yeah. And, not having any child. I wasn't a babysitter growing up. I didn't do any of those things. That was my sister. She wanted to play teacher. She wanted to play, babysit all the kids. And I was just like, I wanted to work. And so, we were just very different. And, but he just kept drinking, and he would become mean and abusive. And after 1 year, I had actually wanted to divorce him. And I told a girlfriend of mine, and she goes, Marla, why would you want to divorce him? He's making money. You can come and go as you want, blah, 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 blah. And the time went, and I mean, I didn't agree with it. But 1 year turned into the next year, into the next year. And I also ended up with chronic fatigue and slept for 2 years during all of this at the B. So it was just really hard, and I was so depressed, and I was so angry. I was angry at me more than anything else, because yet again I made another bad decision. And I hit bottom, and I got to a point in um, it was the end of 2002, beginning of 2003, where I just hit bottom, and I didn't know what to do. And there was a women's conference, and it's in my book, and it talks about how I met my first spiritual teacher unknowingly, because I was walking up and down the aisles, and she was the only one I wanted to hear speak, because she was talking about how to heal yourself. And I'm like, nothing else is working, so I've got to go listen to this. And of course, at the beginning, when they ask all speakers, they ask you, who out there, and who did this, and does this resonate with anybody? And my hand just stayed up for the whole entire time. I could see her look over, going like, what? But at the end of her talk, there was a 1-day informational, and I went to that. Still couldn't wrap my mind around what I was getting into, but this little voice inside my head kept saying, nothing else is working. You have nothing to lose. Nothing else is working. And so I signed up for her 4-day basic, and that's when I had my first known psychic experience. And I still had a lot of confusion, but I had the psychic experience that was like, oh my God, that's phenomenal. Ended
Right.
up joining her 3-year school, because again, that little voice kept saying, you have nothing else to lose. And so I learned 14 healing modalities, and that's where I got more healing in those 3 years than I had with almost 10 years of talk therapy. And it was powerful. I mean, look, the birthing process is painful no matter how you do it. Labor is labor. And it doesn't make a difference if you're birthing a baby or rebirthing yourself. And so I went through a rebirthing process. And then I didn't think I would come out there being an energy healer. And so I went on with my life, and my ex ended up passing away.
So sorry.
Which is a whole nother long story. And I was in this horrible place because people were making me responsible for something I wasn't responsible for. And so a guy I was dating said, I'm moving to Memphis. Would you like to move there with me? And knowing that what I was going through, and I'm like, yes, because my fight or flight is like right in. Now, I was dating this guy long distance for almost a year. So as nice as he seemed, we weren't close, but it was like escape. So I ran to Memphis, and within 2 months, he pissed me off because of, his real self was coming out. And I said, we're done. And stayed there for a year and a half, but started dating my husband up north. I started dating this great guy down there, because I decided I would no longer be serially monogamous. I would date. I wasn't sleeping around. I just wanted to, date, because my feeling is if you date a number of people, you can then weigh things out and see what's working or not working for you, right? And so anyway, I did that, and the long and short of it is, my husband and I are now together. He was the one from up north. That relationship stuck. The other one I broke off. And it's the happiest thing I've done. But at some point while I was with him, we were traveling, and this big booming voice woke me out of a deep sleep and said, you need to start a practice, and you need to start helping people. And I was like, oh my God, because I couldn't even say energy healer. It was like, I'm an energy healing. I couldn't say the words. And it's like, there's sitcoms where people can't say I love you when but that's how I was about saying energy healer. And then all of a sudden this boy, and I thought it was my husband. And it's like, why would he say that to me? Because he, you know, he's like, I don't believe in that. I'm an engineer. It has to be scientific. So I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I looked over and he's sound asleep. And it's like, what? Like, where was this voice coming from? And I spoke to him about it. And I guess I said, well, maybe I'll do this part-time. Let me try it part-time. And from part-time, it ended up going to full-time. And then all of a sudden, all these other doors started opening for me. Um, After I had shared a situation with a mentor of mine, she goes, Marla, you've had more opportunities you've said no to. She said, you need to give some of these opportunities a chance. And this was at the end of 2017. So I went into 2018 with my year of yes.
Oh.
And I said yes. I said yes to anything that came across my desk. I said yes. I started my podcast because Spirit was nudging me to do a podcast. And I was never in front of the camera kind of person. I liked being behind the scenes. So when it's like, you need to do this, it was like, oh God. And oh my God, my first lives and all that were just god awful. I mean, you could just tell how nervous I was and uncomfortable. And from there, I went into writing my book. And one thing led into another, and now I'm doing public speaking, and I've got the podcast down, and I've changed formats. um, I wrote a second book. I've designed, well, I don't know if you could see my screen pillow behind me.
Yes.
So, and I'm just, like, now I'm all in, and it's about, my passion and my mission is to help raise consciousness, help open up people to their path, help them live the life that they're divinely meant to live. And we're all divinely meant to live great lives. The problem we have is we have wounds. We're all wounded. And some of us are less wounded than others. Some have healed better than others. And some just keep making the same mistake over and over again, like I used to. So I'm the example of, the same person who kept making the same mistake over and over again, thinking that things were going to change. But why would they? Because I'm doing the same thing over and over again. It didn't work the first time. It didn't work the 100th time. At some point you go, okay, maybe I need to change my tactics.
Right? Yeah.
And so here I am today.
Wow. I need to say this. You're an expander for me. I don't know if you've heard the term. Lacey Phillips, she's also kind of in this realm. But she talks about it's people that they're vision holders. They kind of show you, oh, wow, look what I think is really possible. And when I was reading your story, this didn't happen to you when you were in your 20s. Like, you had this moment of, oh my God, I need to return almost home to me. I've been so fragmented from everything from my childhood that it's just returning home to me. And there's so many people that are talking about their experience, but they're in their 20s. And I'm like, cool. What if you're not in your 20s and you want to still feel like your life is, all the struggle, all the pain is worth something. And when I was reading your story, and I was just so impressed because I kept thinking, I'm like, she's not claiming to be someone else. She's fully owning everything that she's experienced and taking responsibility, because you're not blaming everyone. You're like, no, I can see both ends. And it's just so incredible. What I wanted to ask you was, do you feel like it was a gift reconnecting with him 20 years later, because you were still trying to save you, and it was kind of mirrored with his own kids? Or am I
Yeah.
totally off?
No, I think you're correct. I think you're 100% correct. Was it a gift? Um, Initially, I didn't think it was a gift. I thought it was another one of my bad decisions. But what I've learned through all my education, and I've had almost 20 years of continuing education, is that, and I mentioned this to you earlier, is that I now look at everything as a lesson, opportunity, and a gift. So yes, in some ways, in hindsight, my decade with this person was a gift because there was a whole lot of growth that went. There was the birthing process, which I mentioned earlier. So it was painful, it was ugly, it was bloody, it was god awful. But then I got reborn. And as a rebirthed person, I now live my life with gratitude and joy and now turn to everything that happens to me, positive and negative. It's like, okay, what's in it for me? Is this a lesson? Is this an opportunity? Is it a gift, or is it a combination of? And so that's how I move forward with it. So yes and no, it was a gift, but it was a painful gift. I mean, it was really hurtful, and I was torn down to my fabric um, in this relationship because it was so brutal. And not physically. I mean, I wasn't beaten up. I don't want anybody to ever think this person ever laid a hand on me. No. But emotionally it was brutal. And, I kept looking for my well to get filled up, and I was not getting filled. I was not getting nurtured from anything around me. And then when I found out that after he died, that he had been lying about me for years to the people he worked with, and he told them things that weren't true that was happening at home. So he'd be one way at home, and then he'd go to work and say, "Oh my God, she's just," and it's like, when I heard it, it's like, well, that never happened. He would just make up things so that it made me look bad and not him. He didn't look like the person who was neglectful or abusive. It made me look like I was the ungrateful one, the abusive one, and that was not the case. So, but here I am, and I'm in an amazing marriage. Next year will be 10 years. We're going to renew our vows, and I mean, happier than I ever thought I could be with a human being, with another human being.
So, oh my God, so beautiful. So before I want to know more about kind of that, but we have a little tradition here on the Journey Within. I love to astrologically profile everyone. Um,
Okay.
what's your sun sign?
Sagittarius. My birthday was yesterday.
Oh my God, happy late birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, that's why my moon is definitely picking up your Sagittarius. I have Sag rising and Sag moon, so I'm always like buzzing when there's like Sagittarius energy. Do you happen to know your moon and rising as well?
Scorpio and Leo.
Oh, oh man, what a beautiful combination.
It's big.
I mean, you're not meant to like hide. You're meant to be seen. Like it's like, hey, I'm here. Wow. You know what? No, now knowing that, I can kind of see. I'm like, yeah, that like it makes sense. It makes sense. So I want to dive deeper into your relationship with your husband before we kind of pivot off to that end because I know myself. Um, you talk about your first psychic experience,
Yes.
and I know for me when I first had it as an adult, I was like, am I crazy? Wait, is this real? And I know that a lot of people kind of wonder, they're like, wait, is this real? How was that for you? And how were you able to trust that, like that inner guidance?
So what happened was I was in class
Mhm.
and we had partners. And so one person was a receiver and one person was the giver. So the giver would hold their hands out like this, and the receiver would put their hand on top, and we were knee to knee. So the what we do is we ground together, we connect our high selves together, and we ground. And so I just kept praying, please give me something, please give me something. Don't let me disappoint her. I mean, I just was praying and begging and begging, and I got three visions. One of them was I saw a long braid, thick hair, long braid. Then I saw it cut off and it turned into a rope bridge. And then the next thing I saw were just two little hands playing piano. That's all I got. Just those three things. But the girl, then I told her what I saw. She was very earth mother like. She would grow her hair very long. She had this ritual of going into the forest and she would cut her hair. She would banded both ends. She would cut her hair. And then she was talking about, and I can't remember where she lived, but she was living in some rural area. And when she had to walk to town and back, she had to cross a rope bridge. And then they were living in Wisconsin, I believe, at the time of this experience I had. And she said, really, our only piece of furniture is a piano. And I'm teaching my kids how to play piano. And I was like, oh my God. I was elated because I have a girlfriend she's got the best gut instinct. I mean, and later on I learned why, but she was just always so spot on. It's like, why isn't my gut doing that? Well, I realized I lived in my head. Well, if you're living in your head, there's no room to get information. But during this process, I had to get out of my head, which gave spirit room to give me something to give to somebody else, but also showed me that I have talents and abilities.
Wow. You know what? I'm starting to see a pattern. I feel like the time when you do get that psychic ability and it kicks in, it is because you're kind of surrendering for someone else. It's not personal that you're like, I need this. Now that you're talking about that, my first psychic experience as an adult, it was very much similar in the sense that I'm like, how do I know this? Wait, why do I know this? Why are you giving me information? Who is this person you're talking about? And then I share this with the person in front of me. And she's like, what? And I'm like, wait, what? So it's interesting how it's not always for us. It's like more of just like giving us, hey, look, I'm here. Listen, start listening and stop ignoring me.
That's it. And the reality of it is it's none of your business about the information you're getting if it's meant for somebody else. So that's the caveat, if it's meant for somebody else. Because I was doing an exchange with someone, and I had this picture of an octopus, and her head was on the top of the octopus, and the tentacles were out there being pulled and stretched, and she was turning, and it was like one of those carnival rides where you each have like a tentacle and you're being whipped around. And she goes, oh my God, that's so accurate with what's going on in my life. And then she told me what was going on. And it's like, okay, good. It's just like little things like that. But you have to just not question it and just, share it the way you're getting it, because filtering it only hurts the reading, hurts the exchange of information.
No, that is very true. I have a friend that's an Aries, and I'm always picking up stuff. Like we'll get on the corner. I'm like, by the way, this, and then she's like, how did you know? I'm like, seriously, why are you still asking me that question? But it's funny because sometimes she wants to know more, and I will have answers, and then they will completely block it off where I'm like, I can't speak. I can't make sense of anything. And I've learned that you want to say more than you're supposed to. Shut up. Like there's a time and place. Let people get there. So it's interesting how we do need to have respect for the message and not trying to manipulate it for our own kind of ego. Yeah. Ego. That ego. It's like right as you were saying, I'm like, that ego.
Yeah, I mean, ego has its place, but ego also can really get in the way and hamper information.
Oh yeah, definitely. So you mentioned your screen pillow
Yes.
in the beginning. You are a really big advocate for screaming in pillows. I mean, you created the screen pillow. This is incredible. You also talk a lot about using like a plastic bat and like getting your emotions out. I would love to talk a little bit about that.
If you can see my little mini version right there.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Let me pull it. Here, I'll pull it. I love it. I use a bigger one, but this is great for show and tell.
That. Yeah.
And so, I mean, because what happens is a lot of us are taught to repress. A lot of us are told if you show your emotions, if you show how you feel, people are going to take advantage of you, or you're weak, or you're this or that. And how many times have both boys and girls been told, stop crying, stop crying? Either, or I'm going to give you something to cry about. That was my father's big one.
That was my mom.
If you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. So you start pushing everything down and pushing everything down. And at some point, you can only put so much down. And if you don't get it up and out, that's where disease comes in. It's the anger, it's the stress, it's the repression of all the emotions that you are not allowed to share. You're not allowed to express because they're labeled as bad or weak or some negative adjective, I perceived negative. But I think anybody being called weak isn't going to take it as a compliment. I just, but you take a bat. I use a Nerf bat or a plastic bat, and you go to a soft surface. And I will tell you this. This is my caveat. This is my note. Do not use this on a human. Do not use this on an animal. This is only meant for getting out your own emotional garbage. And you start hitting with all the might you can muster up your soft surface, whether it be a mattress or sofa, a soft chair. And I'm telling you, in less than a minute, you're going to start feeling things coming up. Here's the trick. You have to let it come up and out. So if it means crying, cry. If it means screaming, scream. Whatever it means to you, you need to let it up and out. Now, a lot of people don't live with a lot of land around them. So if they wanted to do primal screaming, which was such a cathartic, it is a cathartic deck, as is crying, use a pillow. So I designed the pillow as a reminder. It's humorous, but it's also like you can't miss. I don't know if you can see it if you want me to pull it, but you can't miss the directions of like put your mouth here and scream. But it muffles the sound. So people who live in close quarters with others are going to scare people, and you're not going to have the police knocking on your door.
Right.
So that was the purpose of designing it.
I love that. And I love that you're such an advocate for it, because it's true. We have been taught to repress so much. And a lot of the times, like I even caught myself with my mom a few months ago. She was crying, and I'm not used to seeing her cry. She's super avoidant, which is why I also don't know how to process emotions. And I'm like, Mom, it's okay. Why? Like, you don't have to cry anymore. And I caught myself, and I'm like, wait, no, actually, cry all you like. It was this moment of, we think we're trying to make them feel better by saying don't cry, instead of actually saying no, cry, let it out. So I love that you touched on that, because
And what she needed was you to put your arms around her and let you know that it's okay to do whatever she needs to do to release. Because obviously whatever the circumstances were that got her to that point were huge, especially if she's not a crier.
oh no, that was something she's been kind of working on that, because I really got into attachments a few years back, but I wasn't in a place where I was able to look at my own attachment without ego coming up, so I could not even address it with anyone else. And last year I started to kind of just notice certain things with her, and I would just be like, just look at this. And when she started to kind of look at that, she's like, oh no, I don't cry. And I'm like, no, you don't. You also are very wipe your knees and keep going. Like that was just what you grew up with. It's not anything bad. It's just that's what has kept you safe all your life. So she's really gotten into primal screaming in the last few months, and it's amazing.
Good for her.
Because she'll call me and she's like, I feel so much better. I just screamed in my car on my way to work and I'm ready. And I'm like, Mom, I'm happy. I'm glad you're ready to kill it.
How good for her.
Yeah.
And the fact that she actually started doing it and she sees the benefits of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I have to say, I used to be one of those who were like, oh my God, if somebody saw me, God forbid somebody sees me like not having every hair in place and, carrying myself in a certain way. And it's sort of like, now it's like, screw it. The only caveat to that is if I'm going somewhere where I have to have my makeup on and because I don't carry my makeup with me
Okay.
and I need to cry, I will postpone it because I have no way to touch me up.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the only thing, because I guess I should learn to carry my makeup with me.
I mean, you do you and whatever makes you. I've right now have gotten into of being okay with crying or showing emotion anywhere. I've always been more of like, oh, it's unsafe, so I gotta just freeze and stay like this. So just allowing myself to, if someone says something and I get teary, not automatically be like, why are you getting teary over that? Stop being so.
Oh,
It's like it's okay.
I get teary over commercials. I mean, that I don't, then I don't mind. But I'm just saying, and if I'm going to the supermarket or going to a dry cleaner and something happens, oh, I don't care. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, but if
Okay.
I'm going to an appointment and
Oh,
I don't carry makeup with me. So if
okay. So
I'm
you'd
going
walk around
some,
like this afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
with the streaks coming down your eyes, that's the only time. That's what I meant. It's not because I care what anybody thinks at the supermarket. I don't. That's not. That's not the.
No, yeah, you're in a different place. You're more of just like, I need to kind of still look professional afterwards when I interact with people. For me, it's more of like, are people going to think I'm okay? That I've literally been at the store and started to like tear up.
But maybe you needed some compassion from another individual. Maybe that other individual needed to learn how to be compassionate to somebody and say, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" You might be having that issue happening that then and there for that particular reason. You might be a catalyst for their change, not just your own.
Now, that is an interesting little tidbit. I like that.
Thank you.
That's, this is me going like way out there, but no, that is kind of taking it in instead of just me and me. It's as a collective, what does my impact have? And we were talking about this before we started recording. We're very much going into that, or I hope we're going into that in 2021 with all of this change coming up.
That's the great conjunction that we just had yesterday. That's what it's about. And what's moving forward is talking about um, how we're going to be moving into being concerned about the collective, about the masses rather than the singular, making sure the masses have rather than a select few. And that's what we're moving into. So we're moving out of, like we were talking about the birth canal, we're moving out of that birth canal and we're moving into a different place. Here's the trick. The trick is, how do you keep your own individuality yet be a part of the mass in thinking? And that's something to think about, but it's something that's very pertinent in this change is, it's great to want to give to all, but you still have to be able to create individually. You have to create, you might create something for the betterment of all, but you still have to keep that individuality that you're creating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, your Scorpioness is just like, I'm just like, I want to dive into your Scorpio waters. There's so much depth in there. um, I want to know how you were able to implement forgiveness. It's something that I have been working on my own personal level, and it's something that I think as a collective we need to work on, forgiving ourselves in order to forgive other people, and just all of that. How, and this is going to go into like your current marriage, after being in such abusive, even if it is just, and I don't want to say just, because to me emotional abuse
It's
is just
worse.
as, it's worse than physical abuse. My mom would have a, not a joke, but she wasn't a hitter, and the reason she slapped me 3 times and I deserved them both 3 times in my entire life. But her reasoning behind it was, I don't want to just hit you and then you're like, all right, can you just hit me and get it over with so I can continue to go? Because that's
Right.
the kind of dynamic she had with her dad growing up. He would get mad and she was just like, all right, can you just like hit me and like move on with it so I can go on with my day? And she didn't want to kind of bring that into our environment. So total pivot off of that, but just it's hard, because when you need to forgive someone else, if you're having a hard time, at least what I've noticed is there's aspects of them that you haven't been able to accept within yourself. And until you can accept them, it's hard to create that bridge of forgiveness. Or
Well, forgiveness is really tough to begin with. Um, but it's a gift you give yourself. It's not a gift you give somebody else. And forgiving yourself is the ultimate gift. It truly is the ultimate gift. So, in my book, I share a lot of techniques that I've used. Um, I've used the letter writing. That's one of my favorites because you're doing automatic writing. You get into a meditative state, and then you start writing the letter and letting the person know what, all the pain, all the anguish that they caused you. You can use every four-letter word or more in the book. You put everything in. It's unfiltered. But at some point in this letter, you also let them know, though you've done this to me, I want to forgive you and let this go. I'm forgiving you and letting this go. And I'm letting this go because you'll have your own retribution. Here's my belief is karma. You don't have to be there to see karma. Karma is going to be had. You're either going to have a miserable life, a miserable, whatever it might be. But you do have to put the forgiveness part in the letter. Then I step away, I come back, I do another meditative process, and I do a response letter. And again, it's automatic writing. So you go into that meditative altered state and you pick up the pen and you can say consciously, dear Marla. But just let it rip. And again, don't filter, don't correct, don't punctuate. You don't have to punctuate. This isn't for anything. And when you're done, and it could be whether it's like, I'm so sorry I hurt you, you'll read things like that, like really deep kind of a response to the apology, like, I didn't realize it affected you so, but whatever it might be. But you don't read that yet either. And you can do a third one, which is one from spirit, sharing what the lesson is, so you go through the same process, get into a meditative state with the intention that spirit is now going to share its perspective, and then you start writing. And whether you go with 2 letters or 3 letters, give it like 12 hours, give it overnight before you read it. Then come back and you read the letters, starting with the first one, the second one, and if you wrote the third one, the third one. And once it's all undone, and here's the thing, if you're processing, if you're crying, cry. Feel what it is you need to feel to get release from this, because things are painful. And again, instead of pushing it down and reading through it and just brushing it under the rug, feel it. Feel the anger, but feel the forgiveness. Feel the love that you want to send to this person, or that in the response you're receiving. And then I like to get rid of it. I personally like the burning part. Pyromaniac that I am. But you can burn it. You can, well, pipes don't take flushing very well, but you can put it in water, let the ink just drain off, shredding it, whatever ritual works for you, whatever ceremony works for you, set it up that way and get rid of it. And you can set the intention that with the shredding, with the burning, with the soaking, whatever it might be, or with watching the water with the ink going down the drain, I wash away and any ill, and just fill it with forgiveness, replace it with forgiveness. The same thing with burning, watch it go up in smoke, replace it with forgiveness, replace it with love. And you're doing that for yourself. And here's the thing, you can do this forgiveness letter to yourself, for yourself, and you can respond to yourself and for yourself. You were gonna
no, I was just like, I
Oh,
like that.
okay.
I hadn't, you're the first person that's brought in that forgiveness letter um for your own, like I've seen this, like, to do it for other people or anything. I just never thought of writing a letter to myself, and I'm like, I like that.
Why not? Right? We forgive
Right.
ourselves. We need to forgive ourselves. Well, look, we all do crap. We sit there and go like, oh, I can't believe I did this, or I never wanted to hurt that person. I feel so terrible. And yes, you can send your love, you can send your forgiveness to somebody else, but you also need to send it to yourself, and you have to allow yourself forgiving. Now, here's the thing. Once you forgive, you have to release it. You have to let it go. You can't say, I forgive you, and then hang on to it.
Yeah.
You need to let it go. And I'll say, I have a situation that I'm dealing with now.
Mm-hmm.
And in my heart, I know the woundedness and where it came from, but I'm holding their foot to the fire because they need to, in my opinion, in my world, so it's my boundary,
Yeah.
need to acknowledge what they did, because I've had a decade of them doing things over and over and over again, and it's not okay. And though, yeah, I could let it go, I'm not going to let it go. Um, and some people could say, well, that's not forgiving. Well, you're not in me, so you're not sure what I'm doing, but there's a reason for it. And at some point, there are lessons to be had. And if you're going to be, like this thing, if you want to play in my sandbox, be in my energy, well, you have to step up, especially after so many years of doing so many things that have been forgiven and moved on without receiving the appropriate apologies.
I love that boundary that you've set, though.
Thank you.
It takes it from, because I feel like, and I could be wrong, it's not taking it from you like your energy is plugged into them. It's more of, I respect myself enough that this is what I want. And if you can't offer that, okay, that's okay. There's the door. It's not a, I'm not going to live if you don't give me this. It's more of, this is my rule. And I think it's so beautiful. And yeah, it's such a powerful one. I'm right now just like kind of sitting with it, because I'm like, I do that. I think we all do that. It's like, oh, okay, I forgive you. But it's, how often are you going to allow that same
Behavior.
situation and behavior to appear? And it goes back to, I mean, you hit me once, shame on you, shame on you. You hit me twice, shame on me. I should have known better. And I think that's such a great way to advocate for yourself. And thank you for sharing, because I know that's a very vulnerable thing to talk about.
Well, here's what my feeling is I'm not trying to share my personal stuff to vomit my personal stuff out, but I'm sharing because I'm human just like everyone else, and I have the same foibles as everyone else. And sometimes when people hear that somebody's going through something similar to you, or really similar to you, that really hits home, they go, I'm not alone. And if this person can heal and this person could put down boundaries. Now, I was not raised with any boundaries. If you couldn't tell from my early story, there were no boundaries, didn't know of them. Now I have very delineated boundaries, and boundaries are not there to be cruel. Boundaries are there to protect you and also limit what you'll allow other people to do to you or with you. And they're really powerful, and they're really important to instill to the best of your abilities.
They very much are. I love listening to you speak. It's like you're literally pouring from the heart. I'm just like, oh. What
Thank
did, oh no, my pleasure. With everything going on in 2020, we talked about this a little bit before jumping
you.
on. What advice would you give to anyone that has hit their rock bottom this year, and how can they gather the courage to pull themselves out? I don't want to make light of 2020. The reality is, though, a rock bottom's a rock bottom. Doesn't matter
Yes.
what context you want to put it in, that pain, all of that, it feels the same. So I really want to give people light, not just see darkness for 2020. Because like I mentioned earlier, for me, it's been such a year of transformation. And I will
Huge.
continuously look back at it like, thank you. it wasn't what I wanted. God, if you would have asked me in February, I was planning a way different year, but
Weren't we all?
right. But I'm grateful for it. It woke me up from my autopilot and made me realize you need to look at some of your stuff. It's time to do it now since you're in lockdown. Stop paying attention to everyone else. So it's,
Right.
what could you offer to people? You've had a tremendous one yourself. So I would just,
First of all, one of the big things is everything is temporary. Change is the only thing you can count on. So it is, oops, um, change is the only thing you can count on. And so be open to it. Allow yourself to know. You can sit in your rock bottom for so long, but at some point you have to understand where the rock bottom came from. Were they the choices you kept making over and over again? Did the rock bottom come from, you know, well, it all comes back to choice, doesn't it? I'm thinking about it, and it's, more choices. And so what can you do? Well, I would suggest that you reevaluate your choices, reevaluate, the decisions you make, because if you're going to make the same decisions over and over again, you're going to get the same results. And it could be, and I'm going to use relationships. You know how we all have different people coming into our life, but guess what? It ends up the same way. Well, why? It is the same way because, in essence, you're picking up the same energy. And so like meets like. So if you're down here, people are going to meet you where you are. And that's when you're going to have the same relationships over and over again. When you start breaking your patterns and changing your patterns, raising your vibrations, like is going to meet you higher. So another number two would be raising your vibrations, raising the way you think of things. For me, if my vibration's down, I put on music and I sing or I dance, because I've never heard anybody say, I feel terrible after dancing. I feel terrible after singing a song. You just naturally raises your vibration. And I think that is highly important. And then while your vibration is up, try changing the way you do things. So I used to be the serial monogamist, as I mentioned earlier. And when I had come out of my marriage, I decided I'm not going to just date one person at a time. I'm just going to be very casual and date a number of people. And what was nice is that I would give people chances that I wouldn't give before. So, for example, the story of my husband I laugh about is I've known him all my life. He went to kindergarten with my sister. He was my first French kiss in a schoolyard game of spin the bottle when I was
wait,
15.
what? You didn't mention this when we were talking.
Well,
Oh my
I
gosh.
have to have some surprises.
Right. I'm like,
And here we are 20 years later or so, and or more, I don't even know, it was a long time later. And Facebook, the advent of Facebook, and he wants to be my friend. And I'm like, why? And this before I was in, it was over 10 years ago. I was like, why do you want to be my friend? We didn't talk before. We didn't talk now. And then he starts IMing me when it took me about 6 months to become his friend. And then he starts IMing me, and then he'd call me, and then he'd say, well, I haven't talked to you in a few days. I'm checking in. And I'd go to my friends and I'd start laughing. I'd start joking about it and say, what does he need to check in with me for? Because it was like, why does anybody need to check in with me? It was my attitude. And so I'd be laughing like, I'm not his girlfriend. I'm not his wife. He doesn't need to check in with me. Now I laugh. Now he does. But back then he didn't. It was just so weird. And we had dinner one night, and it was the worst dinner. I'm telling you, Andrea, it was horrible. And we joke about the fact that, like, he was so stiff. I mean, he was like a plank. And then when we're leaving, he said, would you like to have lunch tomorrow? And I looked at him and I scrunched up my face and I'm like, really? Like, were you not at this dinner? And he's like, yeah, really. I'd love to have lunch with you tomorrow. I was like, so now my curiosity is coming up. Old Marla, so getting back to what I was saying,
Yeah.
old Marla would have said, nope, busy. And that would have been the end of it. New Marla is like, okay, you have to give somebody a chance. Let's find out what they want. Let's find out what's going on with them. Because at this point in time, there wasn't a romantic thing, at least not on my part. There was no interest. at all. And so, I gave him, we had gone out 2 more times. And then the second time was the day after his birthday. And he said, I said, I'll pick up lunch for your birthday, because I'm like, well, do I have to buy him a gift? He just told me it was his birthday. What do you do? These awkward moments. So I said, I'll pick up lunch. He goes, no, I don't want lunch. And he brought up the kiss from when I was 15.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so when he dropped me off at my hotel, he came around and he helped me out of the car and he pulled me in. And oh my God, that was the best second first kiss I ever had in my life. And then he started opening up a little bit more, and things obviously led to,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a really funny, warm, supportive guy. I totally lucked out. And even with getting married, I didn't want to get married. And he, in his mind, decided he had to marry me. And so he surprised me with that as well.
Wait, what's his sign? I'm like curious now.
He's a Taurus. He's May 21st.
Oh yeah. I'm like, he has to be something very persistent. I was either going with Virgo or Taurus. That was like what I was thinking. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. And so he just surprised me. We used to have this joke where we would share how we care about each other, because a lot of our relationship was long distance. I was living in Memphis. And, the other one would say, so what are you doing? Proposing? I mean, a little sarcasm.
Yeah.
And it would sort of like break the intensity of what was going on. And he did it. I did it. I mean, it wasn't exclusive to one or the other of us. And he comes over and he goes, I need to talk to you. And I need to talk to you. And I said, give me a minute. I was on the phone. A friend of mine was having like her sixth eye surgery.
Oh no.
And and her sixth eye surgery. And so she was sharing with me what was going on. And he keeps going, I need to talk. I need to talk. It's like, 1 minute. So I get off the phone with her. I grab my coat. It's like, okay, let's go to dinner. He goes, no, I want to talk to you. I said, but can we talk at dinner? Like, what's so important that you need
Yeah.
to talk to me right here and now? Let's go to dinner. And he grabs me by the lapel of my coat and he backs me up on my bed. And then he starts talking and he starts telling me how he feels. And so, of course, smart ass that I am, is like, what are you proposing? And he goes, as a matter of fact, I am. And he pulls out a ring from his back pocket. And it was like, oh my God. And I sat for 10 minutes. All I could say was, oh my God, oh my God. Because 2 days before I said, I don't want to get married. And he was dead silent. And I said, well, we could talk about it later, and here we are. And then I'm like, he goes, well, I said, yes. And in my back of my mind, it's like, well, we could be engaged for a really long time. We don't have to. And so
Oh my God.
that's the story of Gary and I.
Wow. Can you just tell Gary I'm like his number one fan right now? I'm just like, Gary, go Gary. Like, whoa.
He's amazing. And I'm so grateful every single day for him. And yeah, and here's the thing. You can find another relationship that's better than any of the other ones you've ever had. Because if you looked at my track record, it was not a good one, with with my choices. And then, I mean, I hit the jackpot. And I feel if I can do it, so can someone else. Again, I had to change my ways though. I had to change my patterns. And that's what allowed it in.
That is so incredible. What a beautiful story. Well, I want to just touch on this. You're talking about how you needed to go through all of this in order for your like and his like to be able to kind of coexist, because if you would have still been here, you guys would have never been in that radar.
No.
So I just want to tell everyone, she's not saying that it's easy. She's not saying that it was like, oh, I was just scratching my butt and like it all happened, because we have this thing where she's like, I'll pray to spirit and source and then it's gonna arrive. It's like, no, you still need to do a lot of inner work on yourself. And you mentioned that it was difficult and it was painful, and look at where you're at now. And I want to just say, you mentioned 2018 was
Yes.
when you got the voice of you need to start a practice. 2 years later,
Oh
look
no,
where
that was
you are. Oh,
2014. That was
2014?
that's when I started my practice.
Okay.
2018 was when I became the year of yes. When it was
Okay,
pointed
so it
out
was
to me
the
that I
year
kept
of
turning down I kept turning down all these opportunities. So I was stopping my own growth.
growth because of that. But in 4 years, look at everything that you were able to do.
It was a lot.
That's
And I keep
magical.
changing course. I keep flowing like a river. So that's another message, in my opinion, is to let people know to be flexible to what might come to you. Don't be so concrete. I just wrote something for the new year and setting intentions. And what I wrote is, like if somebody's an actress or an actor
Mhm.
and they want a role, they want a supporting role, they want any role, but they're not given the supporting role they think they want. They're giving the stand-in for the star. Well, which would you take? Stand in for the star or supporting character? Supporting character has this much, but the star will eventually not make her show at some point where you are able to get in and really allow yourself to shine. So, which might be a bigger opportunity? It might take longer for you to be noticed if you're a small character, but you might want to take the supporting role character so that you could, or the stand-in, so you could then stand in and actually show your entire chops.
Oh,
So
love that. That is incredible. Well, I want to honor your time and kind of, I know we're getting into more than an hour, so kind of wrap this up. What would you tell? So there's going to be two people. 10-year-old you, I really want to know what you would tell 10-year-old you, knowing everything now and
wow.
how independent she was. And what would you tell yourself when you were 18 and you met your first husband the first time?
So my 10-year-old me, I would say not all families are like this, and that just know that you are of value, because there was a lot of abandonment and neglect with what I was going through. You are valuable and you're not dispensable. So that's, and also be patient because everything will change. Everything's fluid. Nothing will stay, unless you keep making the same decisions, nothing will stay the same. Yeah, if you want to grow and change, a whole river will let you flow through it. Um, my 18-year-old self, take people for who they are when you meet them, not who they were when you met them. Yeah, and yeah, and protect yourself. Don't be the savior. Be the savior for yourself rather than the savior for someone else. It might have saved a whole lot of heartbreak. I would have gone down a different path, and I still may have had the same kind of same amount of heartbreak, but it would be a different growth process.
Yeah,
It's like that movie Sliding Doors.
it is. No, it is. I think we like to think that it's only this path that leads us, and there's so many doors to open. The
There's
lesson is slightly different, but it's still the one that you needed at that moment in time.
absolutely.
Well, Marla, thank you so much for chatting with us. I had a
Thank
great
you.
time. It was awesome, and I'm really your story, especially the one with your now husband. I'm just like uh coming from divorced parents. I think I always am looking for like that happy ending, not necessarily from the get-go, but just you can still get there. So it was really nice hearing that. And again, Gary, you are my number one. I'm your number one fan. I was gonna say I'm your number one fan right now, Gary.
Well, I'll let him know.
Yeah, let him know. I hope you have an incredible holiday and end of the
Thank
year.
you. You too.
Thank you. And
I hope
again,
February opens up and blossoms for you the way you're anticipating from what your chart says. I want everybody to know that this isn't just like, pie in the sky.
yeah.
She was checking her chart.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I
go
checked
to
my
Andrea
chart.
for your astrology to learn about what your 2021 is going to be like.
Definitely, I think we all need to dive deeper in there. And if you're curious, guys, look to see where Aquarius falls in your chart and just see what house that's in and kind of play around with it and see what energy is popping up. I always say that energy needs to be directed. Just because we had a grand conjunction yesterday does not mean that all of a sudden we're going to have a breakthrough just because. You still need the energy to have a place to go.
It does have to have a place to go, and it needs to heal. It needs to mend. It needs to heal. We have a lot of healing ahead of us.
We do. We really do.
And it's just allow people to be who they are. You don't need to invite them over for dinner, but allow them to be who they are and have their own beliefs and opinions and wants. They might not, measure up with yours, coincide with yours, but that's okay. It's theirs. You can respect that they have it. You don't have to take it in and own it for yourself.
I like that. You don't have to take it in and own it for yourself. Marla, thank you once again.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate the opportunity to
Thank
be
you
here.
so much. Yeah. I can't wait to hear about your second book and everything else that you have in store coming out. I'll definitely let you know once this is out. I have all your information, so we're going to have everyone's going to have everywhere to where they can find you. But just hearing it from you directly, where can everyone go?
So Marla Goldberg with 2 R's, GOLDBERRG.com. You can see everything that I'm working on and the new educational platform I'm going to be launching hopefully soon. That's going to come out in 2021.
Ooh, so you have a lot going on for 2021 as well.
I'm paring down, but yet I still have. So,
well, that's exciting.
yeah.
All right, guys, go and show Marla some love. Definitely check out what she's doing and support her with her new school in 2021.
Thank
Marla,
you.
have a wonderful, today is
Tuesday.
It is Tuesday. I was like,
It
what
is
day is
Tuesday.
today? Have a wonderful Tuesday and enjoy the rest of your year.
Thank you. You too. I'm so grateful. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.